So, if I'm being completely honest with you, I don't know the first thing about politics. Up to this point in my life, I've pretty much avoided political discussions or debates, and I've even gone as far as to avoid learning about politics because I wanted to have a convenient excuse to not have an opinion so that I could avoid being judged, especially here on this YouTube channel. That said, at the age of 25, I am making the conscious decision to surrender. Because I'm realizing, especially with me not having voted in the prior election and seeing how that has turned out, that if I want to make an impact on this world, or if I want to even be able to operate within this world, I need to have at least some fundamental understanding of how politics work. Bearing that in mind, in this video, I will be reacting to a video from Fair and Balanced, I don't know if I said his name correctly, about the European Union admitting to playing Trump to get a trade deal. Now, for what it's worth, I did read a headline maybe a week or so ago about the EU striking some sort of trade deal with Trump. I'm assuming it has something to do with the tariffs. Again, I don't know what's going on, don't even know where to start. But I'm hoping that this video right here can kind of bring me up to speed, and maybe even in the comments you can help bring me up to speed as well. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this reaction.
When Donald Trump announced his horrible new trade agreement with the European Union this past weekend, he talked about the fact that he has guaranteed investments coming from the EU into the United States totaling $600 billion. He told us this is going to create, quote, hundreds of thousands of jobs. All this new money pouring in from Europe because they're investing in America. And all American consumers have to do in return is now pay the 15% tariff on all goods coming from the EU, whereas last year that tariff was 1.42%. So we're paying 15 times more almost, but it'll totally be worth it because of the $600 billion investment.
So again, I don't know the first thing about politics, but I did get past second grade math. And based on what he's saying right there, the math isn't mathing. It seems like Americans are much worse off for this trade agreement. Again, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but based on how he's describing it, just mathematically speaking, those numbers don't really add up. They do not add up. But I'm sure there will be a lot of people who still defend it.
Now, the only problem is officials with the European Union have come out this week and said, whoa, 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 hold your horses there, fella. We're actually not going to do that. Yeah, you see, it turns out the European Union already invests $2.8 trillion into the United States, which is way more than the U.S. invests over there, by the way. And they don't have any more to invest, okay? Like, yeah, we know you kept saying this number, and we did technically agree to it, but we don't have the money to invest. So thank you for the trade deal, but you're not going to get that money from us.
Isn't Trump's whole thing supposed to be business? I mean, is that not supposedly his whole entire professional background? I could be wrong about that, but I would assume that as a business owner, his negotiation skills would be a little more astute than that. I don't know. Again, I'm uninformed. But it seems like he did kind of get played, based on how he's described it so far.
In other words, as is almost always the case, Trump got played. He got played. Europe was like, yeah, 600 billion. Yeah, no problem. And then a couple days later, like, yeah, we're not going to do it. We don't have the money. So, oops. Now, here's the thing. They didn't just say we're not going to do it. They said we need to clarify. The government is not going to do it, but we're hoping, keyword hoping, private businesses in Europe, they might, depending on their financial situation, step up in the future and invest that money into the United States.
Okay, so yeah, he got played. He got played. Anytime you bring up the word hope in any sort of contractual situation, you got played.
which for the record is kind of similar to what Japan did too, because Japan agreed to $550 billion in investments. But then it was later revealed that most of that, the vast majority of it, is going to come from private businesses, which is also dependent on their financial stability. If the businesses don't have the money, they're not going to do it. But Japan's government will actually kick in a little bit, so I guess that's better than the EU deal. But that's the thing, folks. We have to read these things. We have to dig in deeper. I told you, start of the week after Trump announced these deals that they were crappy based on the tariffs alone, that it go up compared to what they were. We pay those. He announced another one this week and said the U.S. will pay a 15 to 20% tariff on goods coming from the country, but our goods going into their country won't be tariffed. So they get American goods for cheaper and we get more expensive foreign goods. We are getting screwed on this.
Okay, so I would like to believe it's more nuanced than that, but I have a sneaking suspicion that it's not. That it's pretty much that straightforward and that Trump got played. And by extension, Americans got played because now Americans have to pay all this extra money for foreign goods. Am I perceiving that incorrectly? Again, I don't know what's going on, so I'm really relying on you to help me decipher this. But I don't understand why Trump would sign that kind of deal. I don't really understand. I mean, I guess I do understand because he doesn't seem to be someone who really thinks a lot before he does things, but I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me.
And yeah, I guess maybe it's a little comforting that apparently Trump is getting screwed too, because these so-called investments that he has secured are likely not ever going to materialize according to the people who made the deals. And here's the thing. By the time they reach that deadline of 3 to 4 years to invest this money, do you know what will be happening? A presidential election. The other countries are smart. Trump is very, very dumb. They know that, we've got 3 years to invest this money. Oh dear, in 3 years you will be in the heart of a presidential race. And if you threaten us with more tariffs and the economy tanks, that's going to be horrible for your party. So when the deadline arrives, you won't be able to do anything to us, and then we'll bank on getting a better president next time that won't do any of this nonsense. That's what
But the question is, will America get a better president who won't do any of that nonsense? That's the million-dollar question, because that's a pretty big bet to make. Because now we know that the American populace is clearly not thinking rationally as a collective. At least the side that voted for Trump. They're not thinking rationally. So, I don't know. That might be a pretty big bet to make. And again, you don't want to make bets that big and bring the word hope into the equation. But it definitely does seem like Trump, and again, by extension, Americans got the short end of this stick.
those other countries thought. That's what they did. They screwed him over.
In fact, they didn't even get the short end of the stick. The EU got the whole stick, and Trump got a picture of the stick.
Because he is quite possibly the worst deal maker in history. Thanks for watching, everyone.
That's so crazy to me. Again, from what I know about Trump, I don't know much about him other than that he's just a really horrible person overall. But from what I know about his background, he was a businessman. That was his whole shtick. And so as a businessman, you would think he'd be better at negotiating. But he's not. So why is he even in office? I don't understand the Americans who voted him into office, what they were hoping for. I just genuinely cannot wrap my mind around that. And look, you could say I'm left-leaning, whatever. I just like to think I'm logical, at the very least. I like to think I have some semblance of logic going on inside of my head. Seems like a lot of Americans, I read this comment not too long ago. So if you made this comment, shout out to you. I'm going to steal your saying. But a lot of Americans, the lights are on, but no one's home. if you catch my drift. But again, I would love to hear maybe a more nuanced version of how this deal is supposed to play out. But maybe this is the nuanced version. I don't know. Let me know in the comments.